So welcome to this next session of the Saluki Online Sessions. This is Dr. Susan Wegmann, and I'm the Executive Director of our SIU Online and Extended Campus unit on SIU campus. So today we're going to be talking about several things, but among them, some of the challenges for online learning, some of the guidelines that we have for online learning, some of the whys, and we are also looking at some of the ideas, of course, and that's probably the most important reason why we're here today, is to talk about those ideas. So some of the challenges that we find, you can see from the screen here, these were developed by the Online Learning Consortium, as well as ChatGPT, as well as other sources that I've been looking at lately. But program development and alignment, making sure that our programs are all aligned to what they need to be aligned to. If it's a workforce at the end of the program, that's great. If it's another program, all that alignment is critical. And that's a challenge for us sometimes. Competition, we need to make sure that we know what our, I'll call them brothers and sister collaborators, competitors are doing in the field. And we also have to think about our institutional culture, the buy-in across campus. You all are here for a very good reason, and these sessions exist for the very reason that we're trying to implement and upgrade the institutional culture, the buy-in for online learning. And then this rapid evolution of technology, I can't say that enough, that's one of the challenges that's going to be a continuing challenge, which is a really interesting one, but it certainly is still a challenge for online learning. In other ideas, some of the guidelines that we are dealing with in NC-SARA comes to mind. This is our state authorization, and what they help us do is teach our online courses across the state lines. Now, I know some of you on this call today live in other states, and thank you so much for the work that you do for us based on where you live. And so the NC-SARA follows this set of guidelines, and the CRAC guidelines are available on several different websites, but they include things like those challenges that we were just talking about. They are focused in on the quality of online courses, and they really are a student-centered focus. So if you're interested in that, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to give you some more resources like that. But it's quality online learning access. We also have our accreditors that we report to. The Higher Learning Commission is our #1 regional accreditor. Now, we have different accrediting bodies for different subject areas across campus, but the HLC is the one that we, every year, we submit reports to. Every 4th year, we have a big report, and then every 10th year, they do a huge in-depth look at our institution. And 3.A.3 says that our program quality and our learning goals are consistent across all modalities. And as you see, that is face-to-face as well as online, as well as anything blended, anything in the middle. So we are committed to doing that. We've agreed that we're going to do that. Here's some of the CRAC guidelines I mentioned before, that the online learning is appropriate, that our plans are we develop, we sustain, we evaluate, that it's incorporated into our institution's system of governance, which all of those are true. These 3 in particular talk about the curricula. And again, I know that some of you on the call today have a lot at stake when you're talking about the curricula. You are folks that have used your knowledge in the field. And when you talk about, this is what's going to be happening when they graduate, because you're either there right now or you've been there recently. So #6, the faculty responsible for delivering the online curricula are evaluating student success, are appropriately qualified and effectively supported. So that's really, in essence, why we're doing these online sessions. But it just reminds us that that's important, and that we need to make sure that our faculty are up to where they need to be. And then the last one, #9, I thought I'd highlight too, that the institution assures the integrity of the online offerings. And we do this by regular updates. We do this by listening to our folks in the field. We do this on several different levels, and each department really has their own kind of way of doing this and managing that process. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention regular substantive interaction again as part of the why. If you'll remember with me, RSI is making sure that there are scheduled regular times of interaction that are substantive. They're related to the course content. RSI is these three examples. RSI is not the examples on the right, like logging in to check messages. That's not an RSI example. Even submitting an assignment, that last one here, because it's missing the feedback piece. So RSI includes the student doing something and then the faculty providing feedback in a timely manner. So regular substantive interaction is something that we spend a lot of time on, and you're going to hear me talk a lot about that. So let's get into the meat of our discussion today. For engaging online learners, we've got some built-in tools from D2L. We have some things that, we can help you with in terms of building into your course templates. We've got courses and quizzes and surveys. We've got content tools, group assignments, and those such that are actually built right into D2L. So I think that's an important piece to never forget, that our LMS, our learner management system, is really powerful here. So some ideas for engagement. Weekly video check-ins. Now I'm just launching in now to some ideas that I thought either you've never tried before, maybe you've considered and tried, or maybe this is just completely out of the way and you would never try this. But what I'd like to do is at the end of this time, after we get through some of the content, to just have a discussion about whether you think some of these things would help. So some rationale here for a video check-in. This is very different than text-based check-in, because it provides that social presence of the teacher, or teacher presence. And what that means is when the students and the professor are geographically distant, sometimes there's a transactional distance, and that's the technical term for it. When they're in the same classroom, maybe a face-to-face classroom, it's very easy to be connected, right? A video chat kind of gives, or a video check-in kind of gives that feel of this, face-to-face kind of interaction. In D2L, there's the video note feature that's very quick video. You can just throw it in and then move right along. You can embed it in your announcements. You can do it in a variety of different ways. Another idea, an interactive discussion board. Now, we know discussion boards have kind of gone all over the place. How many of you remember the day when we were told, give a prompt and then 2 replies, or a prompt and reply to everybody? Well, this is a little more in depth because, again, we're thinking of regular substantive interactions. So it's a prompt, it's some sort of response from the student, and then it is some sort of feedback, following up on our CRAC guidelines of regularity and clarity, and again, RSI. You can set up graded discussions, and using those rubrics will really help you communicate to the students what's important about that discussion board. I've had a lot of success in this area, so if you would like more information, please reach out, and I'm happy to share some of the rubrics that I have already developed. You can also provide scenario-based quizzes. These are really interesting to take because as the student is taking the quiz, they're thinking about their future. They're thinking about the real world application of it. If you have been providing that all along in the content, then this is something that's a natural extension of that, is just giving them a scenario and then allowing them to answer it based on the course content. For the D2L, you could do the conditional release and the quizzes, and that conditional release means they have to finish a certain portion before they can move to the next portion. And what this does is force them, if you give them quizzes in between, it forces them to react and to think about and to reflect on that learning before they can just zoom right through the entire course content. Collaborative concept mapping. Now this picture is a little bit of a misnomer because they're all literally sitting around a table, but you could do this virtually. So you have students create a concept map, you put it in a virtual platform, and then they decide virtually what that concept map needs to look like. In D2L, you've got your groups tool, you've also got the whiteboard feature. And the whiteboard feature allows you to add in squares and diamonds and icons and, all kinds of things. So it makes it relatively easy. I say that relatively a lot, but it's easier than just, here's a random whiteboard. It's built right into the D2L base. Gamified learning quests, another idea, another way to make engaging student learning. And these are, of course, when you are gamifying, as the word implies, there's sort of a game feel, that you are creating challenges, or you're creating quests, and you're giving students points or badges based on their ability to finish the challenge or the quest. And then, we know what that does to people who are just kind of wasting time. Those games are very, very compelling on, I'm a Candy Crush person myself. And so I love, passing my levels and doing all kinds of things. But if you gamify the content, it's the same idea. The feel is there that they are progressing toward the final resolution, which might be, some sort of award. It might be some sort of ending of the time. All right, so peer review assignments. This one, of course, comes with a lot of caveats, because anytime we have peers responding to peers, there could be the issue of, what are they saying and how are they saying it? But we found that having peers respond to each other, oftentimes they can talk to each other in a way that we may not anticipate. I can be as clear as I can on a text, for example, or a paragraph of text, and yet it can be taken completely the wrong way. And if we have those peer-reviewed assignments set up and rubrics and all kinds of activities and ways that we can describe what we're looking for, then they can help each other on this. A baseline of this might be a frequently asked question discussion board page, FAQ discussion board. And so at the beginning of each course, I would have one of these set up, and then I would say to the whole class, listen, this is your space. If you have a question, I want you to reach back if you see a question on this discussion board that you can answer. And then I would let it go for a couple days, and then I would jump in as the instructor and try to answer what they were talking about. So again, the D2L tool there would be the assignment tool. And you might want to enable that anonymous peer review so that students can feel like they can give feedback, but it doesn't have to be necessarily based on their name. Again, this one comes with a lot of caveats, and it does come with, the fact that there have been great successes in this, and then also folks have struggled with this. But it is a good tool, something I recommend trying out. Interactive video content. This would necessarily make you use other tools like Kaltura or YouTube, but it can be integrated into D2L. And by this, I mean, this is when you have a video running and then the video stops and there are questions that pop up. So the student, under the rationale there, the student can't just play the video and then go play Candy Crush and let it run and not pay attention. The idea is that they have to pay attention to the video, and then they answer questions or do something for that video to progress. Again, easily set up. It just takes a little bit of extra scheduling and time to do that. Choose your own adventures. I don't know if you guys were into those books, back in the day, but it's when you were able to read through something and then all of a sudden it would stop and the text would ask, okay, do you want to go in this direction? Do you want to learn more about this, or do you want to learn more about this? And depending on whichever option you chose, it would take you down a different pathway in terms of that. An interesting idea here. I love the idea of the ethical dilemma or a case study maybe that's related to the course material. So it's not the actual content, because we have to be careful that all students get the same content. but then it's the application of that content. And you make sure that you're really careful with a dilemma or a case study, in that no matter which option they might choose, they're still getting the flow of that content that you're wanting them to get. You do this by using the quizzes tool. There's that conditional release again, and you create branching pathways in D2L. So again, very doable in D2L. Similar is adaptive release content. So they have to meet those certain release conditions in order for the next piece of content to come up. This can take the form of a quiz, can take the form of even just module completion at that point. Virtual field trips, I think we're still exploring this idea, and I think we've not even scratched the surface. Our AI integrations, I think, are coming a really long way with being able to take those videos and giving us that 360-degree video related to a course topic, so that the student doesn't necessarily wear a headset, a VR headset, but they can certainly look around the space that the class may be talking about. So it is embedded into D2L, but you have to use other platforms like Google Arts and Culture or National Geographic VR. I do know of some professors who have bought VR headsets or have students buy their own VR headsets. You can get everything from that cardboard thing, you know, back in the day you put over your iPhone, all the way through to what they may already have with gaming, so big now with VR. So virtual field trips are really interesting. Scaffolded assignments as well. You can tell we're going to go through a lot of ideas really quickly here, so thank you for bearing with me, but I wanted to get a lot of these out there. So you use the assignment tools to create submission points for each phase. So back in the day, like in high school, we would have to do a research paper, right? We would have to submit the outline, and then we'd submit our research, and then we would do pieces and parts. This is the same idea in that you break one large project into several smaller projects. You give them feedback along the way. And then by the time they get to the end of that project, they're not guessing on their grade. I mean, they've gotten good feedback the entire way. So they should have some sort of really good final project. And again, well, I didn't say this out loud, but my thought process is that if they're using other tools like AI or ChatGPT to finish off these things, it's our job to make it as specific as we can to that individual and specific to the course assignment, so that we can hopefully tell the difference between an AI submission and a student submission. Now, we're not going to go down that road here, but of course we need to be aware of our plagiarism tools, the tools that really don't work too well finding AI just yet. We're getting there. But they can help us, and we can develop a sense of a student's voice. And when that voice changes dramatically, or even, you know, things like their grammar usage changes dramatically, we could raise some questions and have some discussions with the student about their use of AI. But scaffolding assignments is one really good way, breaking down a large assignment into chunks that make sense. Another engaging activity would be these interactive study guides. This is nothing brand new, but I thought it was an interesting way to look at self-paced study modules, so that when you're covering a lot of content on maybe a major test, you could help students, giving them that structure on what they need to test or study on, and then making it interactive. Now, that does not mean that you need to be responsible for grading everything as it goes. So you make as much of that as possible into self-graded or automatically graded content. And then as they get to the end of it, they should be ready for that particular assessment or exam or something. So let's jump into AI a little bit and some ideas for AI. What we found is that personalized learning, I think, is going to be the wave of the future. As AI gets even more and more ubiquitous, we can become even more personalized with it. So we're going to use tools like AI to create these adaptive learning experiences. I just learned about MIT and University of Florida, I believe. No, sorry, University of Central Florida, who are using these adaptive learning tools in their graduate level courses that have really, really complex ideas. And they're using them in different ways, but in, I think it's MIT's case, they have a pre-test kind of thing, so that if the students aren't familiar with the content before the course starts, they work with this AI that, the AI doesn't care how many times you ask it the same question. The AI is going to give you 49 examples of the same problem if you need it. But what I thought was interesting, and this will be on our website momentarily after this presentation, but the prompt suggestions at the bottom of each of these. So listen to this one. It says, what the idea is that you copy and paste that prompt suggestion into ChatGPT. It says, I'm a faculty member teaching about blank, and I want to use AI to provide personalized learning pathways for my students. Help me design a system where I can identify each student's strengths and weaknesses, offer tailored exercises to address gaps, and provide feedback that promotes mastery. Include specific examples and strategies I can implement. And then let's use a math topic for this example. So what that will do is give you, as the faculty member, the way to come at that particular assignment using AI. So it's really fascinating. Here's another example as a discussion moderator. So here's the prompt here. I'm a faculty member. I want to use AI to moderate online discussions effectively. Please assist by, and notice you're giving it several things to do. Number one, summarize the key points from the discussion so far. Number two, and you have to feed it the discussions. Number two, asking probing questions to deepen the critical thinking. And number three, nudge quieter students to participate. So it's interesting to think about using AI to help our teaching behind the scenes and then implementing it in the front of the scenes to help the students move forward with their thinking. Just a different way to think about it. Also using AI, tools like Grammarly and Turnitin. I'm not familiar with Codex as much, but Grammarly and Turnitin, of course, are already using AI, but you can provide instant feedback. And giving that actionable feedback really helps students learn, helps them revise. So those are really important topics here. So a prompt might be for that automatic feedback. I'm a faculty member. Please analyze the submissions for these 4 things. And I can see those 4 things being part of your rubric that you've already told the students you're going to be, evaluating their assignments on. Again, you're using these AI prompts as the instructor, but then so it's behind the scenes, but then you're helping students in front of the scenes here. AI generated simulations, scenarios, case studies. Here's an example of the AI prompt that you may want to use. I want to use AI to create interactive branching scenarios that adapt based on student choices. This is a really interesting prompt. I've done it on a couple different subject areas, and those branching suggestions were so cool. They were things that I really hadn't considered until the AI brought it up. So interesting stuff here. AI-driven virtual study partners. Again, study partners, AI, they don't care how many times you ask the same question. Here's an example. This would be the student prompt. I'm a student studying blank. I want to use AI as a tutor or study companion. You have your students put this in ChatGPT. Please help me in the following ways. So number one, answer the questions, but then number two, they're asking the AI to quiz them. Number three, they're asking the AI to clarify, their quizzes, their answers. And then number four, to suggest additional study materials. So it's interesting way to think about using AI. Peer feedback, again, asking them to analyze that feedback. This is the faculty prompt that you would use. And what you're doing, you would feed it the actual submission, then you would feed it the peer feedback. And that is if you're wanting to engage and figure out if that peer is really giving good quality feedback. Here's collaborative brainstorming. What we're trying to do is help students organize the information. Not familiar with Miro AI. Of course, we've used ChatGPT quite a bit, but using it to provide inspiration or to synthesize those group contributions. And here is what the faculty member would use. I'm facilitating a brainstorming session on blank. I need AI to support the process. And then you're giving it 4 really specific things to do. And what it looks like is the AI will give you answers, but it's only one at a time. So they'll do the number 1 thing. Then you have to respond to it in some way for it to go on to number 2. So it will pause. It doesn't just give you everything all at once. That's what makes this really, really, I think, powerful and beautiful. Role playing. Believe it or not, it can serve as one of the members of a role play activity. And, I love the suggestion there in a political science course, AI could assign roles in a mock UN negotiation. The AI could offer the background briefs. You could do it in your course as well, but the AI could do that, and they could offer relevant statistics there. Here's a suggestion for the prompt. And again, this is the faculty member using that prompt. Organizing a group project. I want the AI to assign roles and provide tailored resources or prompts to guide their work. Here's a suggestion for AI just as a simple tutor. I want to be tutored on blank. I did this the other day. I'm learning how to weave, making stuff using yarn and stuff. And I put this in. I don't think I did the step-by-step because I already kind of know that, but I did ask it to ask me questions to test my knowledge and then give feedback. And it was interesting. Again, I learned a lot of things that I never would have learned had I not just kind of opened the floor for the AI to comb through websites. Now, weaving is certainly not one of the content unless you teach that course, but I can see this really happening on a college level to be really powerful with complex ideas. So just a note, there are some things I think that we can use using AI that will help us with limiting plagiarism and misusing the AI tools. I think if we stick our head in the sand and don't use it at all, that's a big old red flag, not only to our students, but also to the world that says, we're just kind of ignore one of the most important things that have happened in the last, 100 years or 50, 75 years of computer knowledge. So we have to be aware and we have to be engaging our AI tools. This one I've mentioned before, but scaffolded assignments. This is, again, one of the tools so that you learn your student's voice. And I can't say that enough. Each student will have a slightly different voice. Each student will make their slightly different mistakes along the way. And if you notice a huge change from one assignment to the next, then there's a question there. There's a potential plagiarism issue. Not necessarily, because they could have gone to tutoring and they could have, done some other things. But scaffolding assignments is one nice way to show that. Personalized projects, I can't say enough. Making it, for example, asking students to analyze their own workplace, their own local company, using the course content that's very personalized to your course. Again, another way, making sure that everybody is along that same pathway. They're all being held to that same standard of, their own work. Oral explanations, video submissions. Wow. It becomes very easy when the student hasn't done the work themselves, yet they're having to, provide these video or oral explanations. They're going to do a lot of hemming and hawing and a lot of, trying to repair what they're saying, and they may not be sure. Now, again, you have to know your student. They may be a very shy person to begin with, so you would have to expect some of that. But oftentimes when they're having to give a video submission, they're going to either practice like crazy, or they're going to be more genuine about where they found that information and how they came to those conclusions. So there's not one, answer that's going to completely do away with all AI plagiarism, but there are certainly tools and techniques we can use. Real-time writing assignments. This one has a little bit of controversy because most of our classes are not synchronous, but you can certainly do real-time writing assignments in asynchronous sessions. You can set timers and you can have students respond to, very specific prompts that relate to their jobs or their course content, or maybe a case study that you've created that is very personal and it's very much your own. And this, I highly recommend doing this at the very beginning of each term so that you get this sample from every student. And then if there's an issue, you can go back to it and compare, their kind of writing, their style, their typical mistakes, and so on. Open-ended questions, other ways, these when you're giving them prompts, it's really hard to find a good AI-generated answer to an open-ended question that's real specific about that course content. So instead of saying, for example, what are the causes of climate change? Then you ask much more specifically, how might climate change impact agriculture in your community? And what mitigation strategies would you propose? So being really careful with your prompt and making it much less easy or much harder for the AI to just generate an answer, which, by the way, I heard an interesting report a couple days ago about, I think it was the University of South Carolina's medical school. I don't know if you heard about this, but one of the graduate courses had an AI agent and they got an A in the course. And so, I would expect it to get an A, but I would hope that the faculty member would pay a little bit more attention. I think we're going to find that even more. I think I think the bad actors are actually going to be trying to do that even more in our courses. But doing things like this may have helped, may not have, but may have helped in terms of being very personalized and, again, getting to know your students. Especially, if they had done some sort of video response, that AI agent, so far anyway, it's pretty easy to tell a video that's been done by AI. Not always, though. They're getting better. Reflective journals, reflective logging, again, learning logs. Wow, I've used those for decades, and they really help get at that personalized part of what the student is learning, how they're learning it. Not only does it give you that insight into what they're thinking, it also helps you see which of those resources you're providing are really important to students, which ones are resonating, and then maybe making some changes afterwards. But using those reflective activities and tools are really difficult to replicate in AI. Not impossible, but just difficult. And course-specific materials, course-specific data. If you can, of course, I recommend changing the data set every single time you teach the course. If you're in a stats course or other data set driven courses, as much as you can change those data sets, you're going to be so much better served, because obviously students talk and they tend to share, and you can mitigate some of those options if you change the data set simply. Authentic assessments, I like to call them performance-based assessments, because if you say this is authentic, it means others aren't as authentic. But the idea here is that they're real-world tasks. It requires creativity, it requires application. So asking them, for example, in a health course, asking them to create a public health campaign tailored to Anna, Illinois, or to a real specific community, is going to be one way that you're going to hopefully personalize this assignment so much that AI would be mitigated and not as easily engaged. Self-evaluation, peer review, those are kind of things that, again, it's really difficult for AI to generate, although they can. But giving the example here, before submitting your paper, write a paragraph explaining how you addressed the assignment requirements. Some of the students will say, listen, I used AI on the first draft and then I went forward and did my own thing. And you're going to have to decide, what does that look like in your class? Have you given previous knowledge to say, don't use AI ever? Or have you directed them, use it to this extent, or don't use it at this part, but engage with it at this part. So be ready. If you ask them for a self-evaluation, some of them will give you exactly what they've done. Now, others will be, I think, a little more nefarious with their suggestions.